Hello and welcome to the AV Performance Podcast, streaming live on Wednesday, the 3rd of March. Apologies for going a bit early if you're waiting on us. Joining me tonight, Ed Selley.
You want to keep working here, stay off the drugs.
Kaz Harlow.
Joe Lewis was 75 years old when they fought.
And Steve Withers.
Royal penis is clean, sir.
Welcome back to the podcast. Don't forget, Monday night, that's the 15th of March, we are back with the Movies podcast. So that's coming back again once a month at the moment. Some really good feedback from the last ones. So thanks very much for that. Hopefully you'll come and join us on Monday. That's Monday, the 15th of March, which is 3 days after my birthday. My birthday being the 12th of March. So just bear
you
that
can
in
drop
mind.
all the hints you like. You're not going to get a present.
And we've also got another manufacturer Q&A podcast coming soon as well. There is an embargo on that one, and it hasn't even been recorded yet. So we'll wait.
It might be crap. I don't know.
Yeah. We'll wait and see. But it's a TV manufacturer. That's as much as I'm going to say. So if you want to find out more about LG, if you want to find out more about TVs, then obviously you can join. I did that deliberately.
No. I mean, LG exists. It's a company, so that's not really an embargo breach, is it?
No. But we're going to talk TVs. So that's coming soon, probably next week after next week's podcast, because the embargo is the same day as next week's Wednesday podcast. So it'll be a day or so after that. But keep an eye out because we've got some interesting podcasts coming up. Unfortunately, not tonight. But we'll do what we can. So what have we been doing this week? Like I say, I turn, I think it's 47. I think.
You think?
Well, I stopped counting years ago. So I was born 74. So yeah, that should be 47. So I bought myself an early birthday present, and it's for a car that doesn't even exist yet. So I bought myself a new number plate.
Blimey.
Yeah.
Excellent.
And that's what I've done.
I have to express my disappointment that you didn't ask for the VOM1T, bribe the DVLA into finally releasing it. But,
No, but I was finding anything that said Mark or whatever, so I had to put up with MCH. So, it's better than having the year on it, I think. Other things, back to TV reviewing. So we've got the B10 in at the moment. It's a bit of a bargain. We're going to talk about it in a little while in the hardware section. I got that in for review. Yes, the Arkham stuff's still here, still sitting in boxes. It will go eventually. And not a lot else going on. Been doing lots of videoing of a kit as well. So I've been videoing all the Arkham stuff and doing some menus and settings tonight once this podcast's over. So yay.
Living the dream.
Rock and roll lifestyle. So what have you been doing, Ed?
I have got some review stuff for you guys unboxed and running, including the most expensive single chassis review that I've ever done for AV Forums. Obviously, I did the big active system, but that came in many boxes, so that was different. This is one single unit that costs £14,499. I'm looking forward to some of the comments on that. I really am. There's some other bits and bobs as well. I've been doing some further experimentation with vegetarian cooking. As I've been trying to be more vegetarian more of the time. I've always done at least 1 day a week vegetarian, but I've upped that to between 3 and 4 days in the week. And I haven't bought any more shoes. In a magnificent display of self-control, I have not bought more shoes. So we can chalk that one up as a win.
How many shoes do you own?
I now have 5 pairs of trainers active and another pair in reserve for some time in the future, as well as a pair of Chelsea boots, dress shoes, and other bits and bobs.
You haven't seen the picture of Ed's shoes?
I saw something pop up on Twitter, but I just ignored it.
It's news, man.
No, far too busy liking Joe Biden.
That's fair enough. And then today, obviously, I now do the podcast in a different location, but I had a reminder.
Are you not at home?
Well, no, I'm in a different room. But obviously, when I used to sit, I used to have a background on, and the reason for that was demonstrated today when I had a little Zoom product briefing about something, and someone said, "Oh, I like your cat background," and it turned out that wasn't my background at all. That was just a cat. So that's why I did that. So yeah, I mean that's what we're down to at this stage of lockdown is crap cat anecdotes. But that's what I've been doing.
Okay, cool. Steve?
I've been, what have I been doing? Fiddling around with my new Trinov. That's not a euphemism.
Not a euphemism.
Which I think is what the Trinov's for. Bit of tweaking here and there. Squeezing every last iota of performance from.
Now, be honest, you haven't got a clue what you're doing. You're just twiddling.
No, I'm mucking them about. There's a 106-page manual. So as you can imagine, I didn't read 106 pages. To be fair, I did flick through it actually, and a lot of it's, you know.
To be clear, is that 106 pages of one language, or is that the full?
Yeah, exactly.
It's 106 pages of English, but given
Right.
that they're French, it's English like you've never. It's English written by French engineers, so you can imagine.
No, that sounds quite romantic.
It's I think if you've seen enough, as many processors and receivers as we have, you know, you can intuit quite a lot of the functions just by, you know, from experience. But once you start to after you've run the optimizer and all the graphs and the various other things you can go into, when you start taking a deep dive into that, it's a lot to deal with. It's fun if you like that kind of thing.
Sometimes
Some people wouldn't call it fun. Yeah. I mean, they're all virtual knobs, obviously, because it's
Because this is 2021. And it's all,
sometimes you can deep dive too much, though.
I think the most fun though is putting on the Atmos viewer, so you can actually watch the objects moving.
Yeah,
around
that
the
sounds
room.
like fun, but I'm not going to pay. What is it, 13 grand for a little thing? It's
12.
oh, bargain.
bargain at half the price. Right, Kaz, what you been doing?
Yeah, schools have been back. So
Oh
it's
God,
been,
yes, I'd forgotten about it. My respect to teachers. I'm sorry we couldn't agree to get you all inoculated and stuff like that. But Christ, that's a relief, isn't it?
Yeah, schools are back, so it's a little bit more peaceful, which is nice. Yeah, it's getting back into kind of normal rather than extremely bitty work, where you're juggling making noodles and wiping bums in between
homeschooling. What you normally do.
Yeah, so it's I have missed them though, and I got to spin Monster Hunter for my sins.
Oh, that's what I did at the weekend.
Yeah, and what did you think, Steve?
I had a terrible film, but the picture quality and sound quality are amazing. The soundtrack,
It's like it's a 10 out of 10.
the soundtrack, if you'll pardon the pun, is monstrous.
Yeah, it is. I mean, it's only an upscale, I think, but I think it looks tremendous.
I'm afraid I won't pardon the pun. I wish you to retract it and apologise.
That sounds great in Atmos. I actually found the film not offensive, which was an improvement over what I thought it would be.
Well,
So
we're talking about it now, or we're going to talk about it later when we've got it down as a review a bit later on. So maybe talk about it then. That's all right.
Is it a review later in this podcast?
Yes, it's on the
Oh, okay, fine. Sorry, I hadn't looked at the running order. So...
Why am I not surprised?
Well, no. In fairness, our head honcho did bounce us into starting this. We were, slightly off the cuff. So, apologies where apologies are due. But no, fine. We'll look at it later.
Right then. That's everybody caught up. We haven't been doing much.
We can't do much.
Some people will be. What's that? Ken says I was born in the year that he took his GCSEs or his GCEs A levels. Okay, well, I'm not that old then, Ken. Thanks very much for that. Right, so that's
the way you said that, though, Phil. You said it like Ken said, "I was born in." Makes it sound like Ken was born in the year you took your GCSEs. But obviously, what you meant was you were born in the year that Ken took his GCSEs.
Not going to do that. He'll understand what I meant by that. Right. So moving on. Competitions, Kaz.
Cool. You can win a Denon Home soundbar 550 worth $499. $599. It's gone up. Also got a bunch of 4K Blu-ray competitions, including the Craft Legacy Blu-ray, Lovecraft Country Season 1, Restless Natives on Blu-ray, Arrow's Demons 1 and 2 limited edition Blu-ray sets, and the Patreon exclusive competitions to win It's a Sin, Hellraiser Judgment and Hellraiser Revelations on Blu-ray, and Criterion's March Blu-ray titles, including the classic Kurosawa masterpiece Kagemusha. Stay tuned for the podcast exclusive competition to win a copy of Alan Bennett's Talking Heads on Blu-ray. Head over to avforums.com.
Didn't know he was in that band.
All competitions open to eligible AV Forums members resident in the UK, and previous competition winners include Nick Teal, who won the podcast exclusive copy of Whiplash in 4K.
Okay, we're back in a sec with hardware.
If you'd like to support the AV Forums podcast on a regular basis, then why not become a patron? Head over to patreon.com/AV Forums to sign up. You can also make a one-off donation through the Super Chat or via streamlabs.com/AV Forums. All donations help us to improve the website and the podcasts. Thank you to all our supporters.
Dylan Thomas, thank you very much for becoming a patron.
I loved Undermilk Wood. Fantastic work. Thank you for subscribing.
Rage against the dying of the light.
Yes, thank you very much for becoming a patron. It really is appreciated. Right, so we've got some TV stuff to talk about. I think some people in the chat window, as we are going live at the moment, I think we're going to talk about the Sonys. Well, we are, but we're not going to talk about them in any depth because we haven't seen them yet. They haven't come out for review just yet, but Sony has announced the pricing of the new OLED TVs, and I think the A90J is looking like it's going to be a big TV for them this year. Just going on the hype, people seem to have gotten right behind this TV, even though nobody's seen it yet, and really bigging
That's
it
the internet
up.
for you, Phil.
Yeah, I know, really bigging it up. So I really do hope that it lives up to
no pressure,
expectation that people on the forums have obviously whipped up for it. But they've announced the prices. So the 55-inch is £2,699. The 65-inch, £3,499, and the 83-inch is £1 under £7,000. For an 83-inch TV,
I'm astonished at how much the prices have got on the Uber size screen.
£7,000 is still a lot of money for a TV, but at 83 inches,
that's a lot of real estate. 83 inches.
Yeah, and when you consider that the 88-inch LG is 30-something £1,000.
Yes.
So yeah, you might have to reconsider that, I suspect.
So it kind of puts it into perspective. So it's going to be available this month. I haven't had any news on review samples yet. I will be chasing Sony this week to try and find out exactly when the review samples will come in, because it's one of these TVs that does need to be tested. It needs to be tested thoroughly. It needs to be measured. A lot of hype out there at the minute. A lot of places saying it can do 1,300 nits, peak brightness, and all the rest of it. Big dollops of salt on that, people. We'll test it. We'll see. But the interesting thing here is that the 55-inch A90J is the same price as the 65-inch A80J, which is the step-down model.
Is this the time to point out that future is spelt incorrectly in that news story?
Okay. So the A80J...
Oh, this is not the time to point out. Why don't you just go in and change it?
Yeah.
All right. I'll do that.
So the A80J 55-inch is £1 under £2,000, £2,699 for the 65-inch, and the 77-inch, £4,200. So again, not a small amount of change, but for a big screen size.
I mean, you've got to think that the way the prices are going on the bigger screen sizes, going back to the conversation you guys are having a couple of weeks ago about TVs versus projectors. I mean, when you're starting to talk about 83-inch OLEDs, depending on the size of the room and how big a screen you could get anyway, that's
if you can get through the door.
Yeah, got to get in the room. But assuming you can get the TV in the lounge and you've got enough space for an 83-inch TV, that is less than buying I think it's about the same price as buying the mkII, isn't it?
Incidentally, sorted.
That's an interesting. That starts to make big screen TVs, big screen OLEDs look genuinely viable. I mean, because before, like you said, Phil, 88 inches was knocking on 30 grand. Anything, I'm not doing that. But $7,000 for an 83-inch OLED, if it is as good as Sony are claiming it's going to be,
Yeah.
That's really quite saucy price.
And then to confirm, does that have the sound emissive screen as well?
Mhm.
Yes, both of them have the acoustic surface.
That's going to be I have to say, as you know, I understand very little about the bleeding edge of visual technology. I'd be fascinated to listen to an 83-inch emissive panel. I think the potential for what that sounds like. I mean, does it become quite dispersed? Have they had to work on focusing that over the 55s? That's all really quite interesting.
Yeah. No, it's interesting seeing the prices, and Steve hinted that there, we're looking at bigger screen sizes for less money, which points to obviously new production facilities coming online with LG Display. So they are pushing for more of these larger sizes. As they cut more of the glass, as they make more of them, they're going to become cheaper. It's just the way things are going, and we're going to come on to some price cuts as well for some big screen TVs from LG. Now, this is only running for a week, but LG are cutting the prices of the OLEDs from last year. So it runs from today, the 10th of March, to the 16th of March. And it's like I say, the product lines from last year. So you could pick up the 55-inch B10 for under £1,000, so it's $989. The 65-inch for $1,439. Then you got the 48-inch C10 at $1,169, the 55-inch at $1,169. So both of those at the same price. I'm not surprised about that. Obviously, we've gone through in the past why the 48 and the 55 are more or less the same price. It comes down to production and scale and all the rest of it. It actually costs more to make a 48 than it does a 55. 65-inch is £1,700, and the 77-inch, £3,150 for the
Crazy
C10.
money.
It's ridiculous.
A 55-inch BX for £989. Just so everyone, in case anyone's forgotten, the 55-inch full HD OLEDs that I reviewed 8 years ago when they first arrived were 10 grand.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. No, it is ridiculous. And then obviously you've got the G10. So 55-inch is $1,439. The 65-inch, $2,069, which is what I've got behind me there, the big TV behind me. And the 77 G10 is £4,049. And I've got to say, I've got the BX, which is there, and the GX or G10, which is there. I've run them side by side. Ain't a lot of difference when it comes to picture quality. There are differences, and if you look at the review when it gets published, I'll be pointing out what the differences are. But the kind of differences that AV Forums members, those who are into the picture quality, might notice, because they tend to watch in a dark room. If you don't, I think you'd be hard pushed to see what the actual differences are in terms of picture quality. And like I say, B10 for 55-inch for under £1,000.
If, like me, you're only watched in the last week MasterChef and Touch of Frost reruns on ITV Player, I suspect probably the differences aren't that significant.
Yeah. And of course, I mean, you're talking about big screen sizes there, and we talked about it 2 weeks ago where we were talking about projectors and so on. But it's a market that's growing as well, Steve, is the UST or ultra short throw projectors coming on the market now.
Yeah, as an alternative to a big screen TV, basically.
Yeah, and we didn't really cover that in much detail when we had that conversation because I haven't seen any. I haven't had any in for review, but you've seen a few now, and you had the Samsung Premiere in recently, and it's done.
I had the Samsung Premiere in recently.
Oh yeah, I hadn't thought of that. Yeah, so you had, yeah, so you had that in it. I mean, it's done some big numbers. Obviously, people are interested in it. It's one of the best performing reviews we've had for a while in terms of the traffic and people reading it. So there's a definite interest in that side of the market because you got players like Hisense who've been doing it for a number of years now. They call it laser TV, but it's just a short throw projector with a screen.
With ambient light projecting screen,
yeah. So I mean, it's one of these markets where it could explode. Really, it's one that we're certainly taking an interest in this year.
Is it the spiritual successor to rear projection TVs to an extent? You know, the enormous real estate for not that much money.
Yeah, but rear projection TVs, and remember, I spent $4.5 on one, were rubbish.
They were
They were
glad you
rubbish.
said that. They were crap.
Yeah, I spent all that money. I loved it at the time because it was the best that you could get.
It was the biggest you could get.
It was the biggest, 50 inches. It was the sort of the first large 16:9 display, but my God, it was shite. It really was. And it was keeping the guns aligned. That was the problem. You had to keep aligning the thing. So, and of course, it's bouncing off a mirror inside. So, yeah.
But do you remember then?
The
More,
mirror,
do you remember more
aberrations all over the shop?
Do you remember more recently when there was that splurge of DLP rear projection TVs covering off the fact that large emissive flat screens, be they LCD or plasma at the time, couldn't scale to that size below a certain price point. So these things crept in. And these short throw projectors could possibly occupy this brief evolutionary point. And judging from Sony's prices this week, it will be a brief evolutionary point before.
Well, you say that, but you got to remember that it's not just about the real estate; it's about the physical product as well. And
yes, I mean, obviously, these ones they cease to sort of be a presence in the room when they're not running, which does
whereas
give them more
you
time.
can't just shove an 83-inch TV into the cupboard when you don't want to watch it.
No.
You know what I mean? But
You've got a big enough cupboard.
The Samsung Premier as an example, you know, it's 6,999, so it's the same price as the 83-inch Sony A90J, but it can do 130-inch image, so that's already bigger. It's got 3 RGB laser projector, so you've got the long lifespan, massive color space. It's native 4K. Well, sorry, that's not really true. It's DLP, so it can do 4K using what do they call it? Forgot the name of the technology they call it. What's some test instruments called their 4K DLP tech? Phil, do you remember
the name for it?
Yeah,
True 4K was what they were calling it.
No, it's got another name. Anyway, it's not important. But so it's not strictly native, but you can't really tell the difference unless you bring a test panel up. And it's got a full smart platform built in. It's got a sound bar built in, effectively. It's a viable alternative to a television, and you won't find any TV that can do 130, with a 130-inch screen. So there is still a niche for this market, and as Phil's pointed out, it's clearly a popular subject because the reviews have done quite well. So
yeah, it's better than some TV reviews actually. So yeah, there's definitely an interest there. So yeah, it's a subject we're going to keep coming back to, especially when the TVs are released. A lot of hype around the Sonys, and rightly so on what we've been told so far. I can see why people are getting excited about it. It's going to be interesting to see what these high brightness OLEDs can do, which the A90J can do. Obviously, there's the G1 from LG coming, and we also got the Panasonic JZ 2000, which we'll find out about in a couple of weeks. I think the press event is on the 25th for that, so we'll find out a bit more about Panasonic lineup then as well. So yeah, we're getting into TV season. Hopefully we'll have some of the review samples in very soon, and we can start discussing them a bit more on the podcast, but we're looking forward to them. Right, so let's move on to one of the other subjects we're going to talk about this evening, and that is amplification, because there's nothing better, and Ed will back this up, this time of the year when it's a bit cold and a bit nippy. Got a nice big power amp switched on, Ed. You get a nice bit of heat from them.
Valves. Honestly, that's the way forward at this time of year. But I only ever get sent valve amplifiers in the middle of summer. But no, I agree. The sentiment, absolutely. Bit of heat generation. You can't beat it. I mean, it's wasted energy, but it's good wasted energy.
It's funnily enough, we're not going to be talking about valves because we're going to be talking about digital amplification, aren't we, Steve?
Well, you shouldn't call it that. No. You'll get pilloried on the forums if you say digital amplification.
Well, you see, I said that deliberately to get people's backs up and get the chat going.
Now, can we be clear on this?
Can we just start? I mean, I think Ed can do this because Ed's best position. But let's just run through the types of amplification you can actually buy currently. A, B, and AB, and Class D. Ed, if you could just quickly explain Right, very, very simply how those
He-
different types of
he'll-
amplification work.
He'll need to sort his microphone because he's really, really quiet at the
Okay,
minute.
hang on. Is that any better?
Yeah, that's better. We
Yes,
can hear
Right,
you.
there we go. Right, okay. Effectively, with old-fashioned amplification, Class A amplification, the output stage is always active. It's always running. It sounds absolutely fantastic because there's no distortion whilst the switch is on and off, but it is spectacularly inefficient. To increase the efficiency, you can have a switching output stage, Class AB. So there's a point where the sine wave crosses over, which notionally creates a point of distortion, which is less optimal than Class A, but it does mean that the output stage runs a great deal more efficiently. Further to that, just again, really complicated, you've got people like Arcam with Class G, Cambridge Audio with their old Class XD, which had nothing to do with Class D. They used, if you like, a hybrid circuit, which took the point where this crossover point occurred and either moved out of the audible spectrum, or in Arcam's case, built a complete spare amplifier to run alongside it. So when one was crossing over, the other one wasn't. Then you've got, there's pure Class B and sort of curiosities that exist largely in a hypothetical sense. And then you've got Class D, which is a switching amplifier. It's either on or it's off. So it's pulses of information, pulse width modulation. It's not digital in any meaningful sense of the word. The word digital has been coined because obviously it's on or off, but it's not the same as what your digital source is doing at the time. And you can additionally, just to make life more complicated, when you're dealing with a complete integrated amplifier, you can do things like put a Class A preamplifier, which doesn't use a huge amount of power, so it doesn't matter if it's that inefficient, in front of a Class D power amplifier and gain some of the notional benefits of both. I'm sure that we can have a long and tedious discussion about this in the podcast comments if we really want to, but that's a potted and immediate breakdown of the versions.
And I guess the reason that Class D has become more popular of late is because we've moved from 2-channel being the norm to a lot more multi-channel systems, particularly when it comes to AV. And as Ed's pointed out, some of the other amplification is not as efficient. And when you're trying to cram, well, in the case of the Storm Audio PA16 Mark II, when you're trying to cram 16 channels into a single box, the more efficient, the better. Now, that's the positive side of it. You can have more channels and it's more efficient, and you can have a lot of power too, despite running so many channels continuously and simultaneously. But a lot of audiophiles will get a bit sniffy about Class D because of the filter that's applied to the signal, and they'll say that it loses some of its warmth and natural tone, etc., and digital sounds, harsh or perhaps unnatural or clinical, whatever choice of words you want to use. So I guess it comes down to what's important to you, and if you want a lot of channels, you're probably going to be using a digital a Class D amp. Whereas if you're just looking at stereo, like Ed tends to, then I assume the majority of the amplifiers that you review or use are Class A or Class AB.
Well, this is true, except that on the front page as we speak is the Marantz Model 30 and SAD30N, so streaming SACD player, but the amplifier is Class D. And that's a £2,700 stereo integrated amp. There's no, at the moment, whilst I have to say, I do believe that the niche for ecologically conscious audiophiles will only increase over the next 10 years. I genuinely believe that. I can be held to that because I'm being recorded saying it at the moment. I don't think at the moment it's a huge selling point for people, but it will become one. But in the meantime, Marantz has chosen it because the distortion issues that you mentioned, if you measure the amp, and I didn't, I need to be absolutely clear about this, but I have, I've potted through other people's reports on the measurements. You can still find this odd behavior that comes part and parcel with Class D amplifiers. But if you are then going to claim that it's in the audible spectrum, you have some quite impressive hearing. You probably need to report to Jodrell Bank and report as a radio telescope, because it's a long way outside the audible band. And I thoroughly enjoyed listening to that amplifier. I thought it was, it sounded every inch a Marantz product. And that's because if you choose to, you can do things with Class D. In this case, Marantz have used their own HDAM modules, which they've been using for 30 years. They've put the latest and greatest versions of those in there. And the product sounds very much like a Marantz. The argument it would possibly be, Steve, that when you need 16 channels in one box, your hand is forced. But there's no getting around the extra efficiency and bang for your buck that you get from a Class D module. It does translate into use for stereo as well, but I would agree with you that there is more of a negative perception to overcome from actually doing so.
I do think that perception is somewhat misguided now.
I agree.
I think certainly if you go back 10 or 20 years, then I think a lot of the arguments against Class D would absolutely true. I do think that, you know, as technology's evolved and manufacturers of Class D have got better and better at it, that these days there are some extremely good, really genuinely impressive Class D amplifiers. And by coincidence, I happen to have had a couple in recently. There was the NAD M28, which is a 7-channel Class D amplifier that uses Purify's Eigentakt technology, which was developed in part by Peter Lindorf, who owned Lindorf, obviously, and used to, in fact, own NAD at one point. And he's been you know, a pioneer in Class D amplification for decades.
25 plus years, yeah.
Yes, exactly. So he knows what he's doing. And this Danish consortium that's called Purify, they are really pushing the boundaries of what you can do with Class D in terms of not just the power delivery, but a lot of power, but also you know, the quality of the sound as well. And as I mentioned just a few minutes ago, there's also the Storm Audio PA16 Mark II, which now forms part of my my own reference system at home. And that obviously the big selling point of that is there are 16 channels in one single box, which at the moment, at least, as far as I'm aware, is the only amplifier that does that.
Yeah, I think so.
Because it's true. One of my complaints about the NAD itself, you know, you can debate the looks, because I think it's quite bling for a power amp, but obviously it's designed to match the processor. Yes, the processor, the modular processor. So that's why it looks like it. And you know, it is unusually attractive for a power amp, but it's 7 channels. And I have to say, I mean, I understand there's some logic to it, because I think they at one point were making a 7-channel power amp, and I guess they think 7 channels is a good choice for you know, front, left, and right, center, surround, and rears. But actually, when you're talking about immersive audio and the processor does process more channels than 7, then if you're talking about something that goes up to 16 channels, then you really need 15 channels of amplification plus the subwoofer channel. 2 M28s isn't enough. That's only 14. So it would have made some more sense, I think, to maybe gone for 8. Would be my personal choice.
Although
2 of those. I can understand there are logics, you know, maybe there's a cost factor as well. I don't know.
But 8's an unusual number, isn't it? Because I'm aware the ADAs did 8 channels, because I've got 2 of them here, 2 8 channels to make 16
and Trinov
channels.
does an 8-channel power amp as well.
Yeah, but yeah, they're quite rare though. You know,
it's a hard habit to break, Steve, because for so long we've associated AV power amplifiers with being odd numbers.
Yes, I know. I'm sure that they chose 7 because that's, you know, what they're used to, and 7 channels is as a base surround system. That's what you need. But the reality is, we're moving into, particularly when you're talking about buying high-end separate power amps, you know, people are looking for more. And yeah, you could say, well, you could just buy, you know, a couple of extra channels, but quite often you're trying to minimize the amount of plugs you have to deal with and the amount of boxes that you have to deal with. Certainly, you know, you could get 8 2-channel power amps, but that's a lot of real estate and a lot of plugs. You know, and it becomes quite messy. You can bung it into one box.
Remember last year, Steve, I reviewed a stereo system which had 6 power amplifiers in it. So in terms of just glorious wastage, I'm on a different page to you. So, but just sorry, very quickly, Phil. One thing I would say that it crops up in some of the comments, and it may crop up here. If you take the Marantz Model 30 that I've just reviewed, and then something at a similar price, the Riga Ethos, so that's £300 more, and that's a very much a Class AB amplifier. No Class D whatsoever going on in there. If your argument is that Class D is somehow harder and brighter, I can assure you that the Riga is an altogether more in-your-face amplifier than the Class D Marantz is. You can make a Class D amplifier sound any way you like.
I've got to say, one of the best AVRs I've listened to in a number of years was the NAD. The T778 Class D, absolutely fantastic. Sounded amazing, and it made an impression, because I still talk about it now.
Yes,
it really made an impression, and that was a Class D model.
I think that the M28 from NAD and the PA16 audio both sound fantastic. Even though whatever you might think about Class D, I think they sound really good. But what really sells it to me, not just the fact that you can have all those extra channels, but the added efficiency of Class D means that they deliver some serious power. And I think we've had this conversation before, Phil, about when you're watching a movie soundtrack, particularly when there's a lot of channels being driven simultaneously. The one thing you don't want the amplifier doing is running out of steam.
It's to feel it,
because then it can sound terrible. But if you've got headroom, if you've got that extra space, you can go loud without it seeming like it's loud.
Yeah.
There's a sense of power and control and headroom to the sound stage that you just can't get unless the welly's there to start with. And you may never go that loud, but you having that option and having that space to breathe just makes a massive difference. We'll go back to Monster Hunter later when we talk about the film, but it's got a ridiculous soundtrack, ridiculous. And this was pummeling me, but I never felt strained or loud or stretched or as if it was struggling in any way, the system. It was just,
to be fair, those arguments are
soundstage.
just as valid for 2-channel. Again, the Marantz pulls a little stunt. It's always regarded as an optimal in AV, in hi-fi circles. If your impedance halves, your power output doubles. It does stuff like that. It'll drive. You'd have to have something pretty grotesque in speaker terms for it to have any chance of struggling with it. Grumpy Capybara asks, does having a monoblock amp have any advantages? Yes, notionally, if the amplifier is only doing one channel, there's absolutely no danger of crosstalk, provided that the preamplifier or processor didn't send any crosstalk to it. There's no danger of getting other channels of signal being amplified at the same time. And it also means that you can have one power supply per channel of amplifier, which does, it tends to ensure that things are tickety-boo. But as Steve says, if you've got 16 channels, that's a lot of monoblocks.
Well, one other myth that probably should bust right now is that whilst Class D is more efficient, it's not cool. It will generate heat. There are 2 fans in the back of the Storm Audio because it can pump out some serious when you're driving that system. Yeah, well, no, it's got 16 channels in there. Fair enough. But even the NAD, it has the grills on the top, doesn't it, Phil, for cooling? Because it will generate some heat. It's not, these don't run cool, and I think that's something of a myth that's been around. Also, just quick, someone asked a question about who makes the modules for the Storm Audio. It's Pascal Audio, another Danish company. So it looks like the Danes are the pioneers when it comes to Class D.
Well, no, but again, it does, in part, it feeds back into a slightly greater level of environmental awareness. I mean, I don't want to keep banging this drum, but as I have pointed out on numerous occasions, after my divorce, I spent 18 months living in a shed with a pay-as-you-go electricity meter. And I can assure you that when you're running the big Class AB amplifiers, there's a little red light on pay-as-you-go electricity meters that flashes when you're sustainably above a certain level of electricity consumption. It's normally meant to show when you're running a kettle or things like that. And when it's running because you're listening to an amplifier, that is a reminder that, efficiency does count for something, even if you're not necessarily concerned exactly about the plight of the polar bear. It's costing you a lot of money to run some of these big Class AB, and to say nothing of Class A amplifiers. And if you're listening to music, if we've got our shiny new future of working from home, listening to music for long periods of time, you might want to give that some thought. because over the course of a year, if you're working from home and listening to these things, I genuinely think it would be a chartable and measurable difference to your utilities bill.
Yeah, that's one thing about these ADAs that I've been running until recently. Obviously, they're custom install amplifiers, so they're supposed to be in another room or in the loft. They're not supposed to be in this. So they've got one fan that pulls the air in. They've got another fan that kicks the air out.
Yeah,
better than the central heating in that room when two of them are running. Seriously, the amount of heat that thing, especially if you're really cranking it up, and of course it's got the VU meters on the front for all the 80 channels. So like you, Steve, where you're looking at where the objects are on your fancy processor, at least with the ADA amps, you could see if the ceiling speakers were being used, because you could see if they were receiving any audio signal into the amplifier and stuff.
The Trinol's got a display like that on the front, and
Right.
like on Monster Hunter, all 16 were up. It was like, blimey, they are not mucking about here.
Yeah.
Quickly, I think Ken mentioned, he asked about Class G amplification, which I believe Ed mentioned earlier when he was talking about what is essentially AB hybrid, and that's what our
it's a crossover displacement circuit.
Emotiva use something similar. It's a Class AB hybrid, and I used well, actually, Phil, you've got it now, haven't you?
I have. I just haven't plugged it in yet.
Yeah, but that 11 channel, they do an 11. Well, they do a number of different channels.
Yeah.
But they do an 11 channel AB, and that's a cracking amp. Absolutely cracking amp. So if you don't want Class D and you would rather have Class AB, Emotiva, definitely worth looking at.
And quite cost effective as well.
They are very reasonably priced, and there's also the really clever bit is that you can, because they're modular, you can actually increase the amplification as your system grows.
Yeah. So we still haven't answered the question that you set, Steve, which was which type of amplification is best. So come on then.
Depends on your needs, doesn't it? Really, let's be honest.
There is, I mean, please don't misunderstand the limitations here. It is spectacularly wasteful. But if you have just two loudspeakers and they are reasonably sensitive, the sheer unbridled joy of a Class A amplifier. I mean, many things that are phrased as Class A are good fun, and this is no exception to the rule. It is a phenomenal thing, and if you are running efficient loudspeakers, you do not need a lot of power, and Class A is a viable solution to that. And Class AB, many of the amplifiers that I've raved about on AVF, actually the vast majority of the ones I've raved about on AVF are Class AB designs, and they sound fantastic. For two channel, for the moment, my favorite amplifiers still use Class A or Class AB amplification, but in two channel terms, Class D is closing the gap, and I have no difficulty recommending them when they're excellent.
Yep, good stuff. So yeah, I think we've exhausted that conversation for the time being. But if you do have questions,
I thought Steve was going to give his multi-channel. Is Steve?
Obviously, yeah. Given my not unique, but given my unusual requirements, I really am going to be going Class D, because I don't think that's any other option. Although, like I said, I mean, up until quite recently, I was running 11 channels of Class AB, but I've been very impressed with both of the Class D amplifiers I've had recently in my system. And I think, as Ed said, Class D has come on leaps and bounds in recent years in terms of delivering continuous power to multiple channels efficiently. Class D really, I think, has the edge.
And I think it's not just the technology is improving. People, like all technology, people are getting better at implementing it as well. And that makes a huge difference.
Yeah, it does.
So, yeah, I think the future is going to see more and more of it. And I would say that you do not need to be worried about that at all. I think you'll still be able to buy an amplifier, be it two-channel or multi-channel, that still delivers the sonic preferences that you're looking for.
Are we finished now?
I think so.
Okay, cool. So if you've got any questions, get them in the chat window, or you can put your questions to us via email if you're listening a little bit later in the week, which is podcast@avforums.com. And you can also put your thoughts under the podcast in the podcast forum. You'll find that in the forum list at AV Forums. We're right down the bottom near the feedback section. So you can pop into podcast, leave your thoughts there, and then you can pop into feedback and complain. That's what we're there for. We're at the bottom of the forum, keeping everything else up. So yeah, get your comments in. We've also been running some polls on our YouTube channel if you haven't already noticed that, then hit the community button on our Facebook, our YouTube page, and go and answer some of the polls if you haven't already. Some interesting questions there, some silly questions, but there's some interesting ones as well. Go and put your thoughts
and
on.
Nowhere near as intrusive as the ones on the 2020 census or 2021 census. I don't know if anyone's had a look at those.
No, I
Have
haven't
you
bothered
had a
to have
census
look
yet? Have they sent it
It's-
out?
Yes.
Yeah,
you should
I've
have
had my
received-
letter.
and you'll get fined if you don't answer it.
I haven't had it. How can I answer it?
Well, that's a reasonable excuse, but for if you have received your letter, just make sure that your missus hasn't put it somewhere safe, or your dad didn't put it somewhere safe when he was staying with you, because dads are very good at that.
I got threatened last time with a fine because I filled in 3 forms and sent them back 3 times, and still a person came at my door knocking on the door saying, "You haven't done your census yet." I said, "I've done it 3 bloody times." They eventually got the message and didn't come back, but yeah, I did it 3 times last time. So at least if it's online, it's done and it's away and it's sorted this time around. So yes, keep the conversation going, keep your questions coming in. We'll come back to them a little bit later on, but I think we've nailed that subject, and we've still got lots more to talk about tonight as well. We're going to move on to software next.
If you enjoy the podcast on YouTube, then please like and subscribe. If you're listening to the audio version, then please leave us a rating on your podcast app. We invite you to email questions and feedback to podcast@avforums.com and join in with this episode's discussion thread in the podcasts forum at AV Forums.
So starting software as we always do with Ed's album of the week. I've got to say, this is the first time I think Ed's choice hasn't really married with my taste in music.
Yeah, I got the hint of that during the cutscene when you said plinkety plonkety. Yeah, okay, well that's fair enough. You can't please everybody all the time. This is this was going to be the Kings of Leon album because it's been ages since the Kings of Leon album, but 2 reasons why it's not the album of the week. That's because 1, I'm not that blown away with it, and for long and complicated reasons I'll discuss at the time, it's going to be the vinyl release of the month because whatever the quality of the album, the vinyl release is very significant. So, album of the week is Hall of Mirrors by Neil Cowley. Now, depending on how tragically sad you are, Neil Cowley might be better known as he's been quite prolific in modern British jazz. And if you aren't already alarmed by those 3 words, then good luck. But he's done a lot of work with the Neil Cowley Trio, which is an imaginative name. But Hall of Mirrors is a solo effort, and it is described as modern classical. And I don't think that's completely fair. It has elements of modern classical, but if, like me, you are a fan of people like Nils Frahm and so on and so forth, this is going to be up your alley. It is as much as anything an ambient work. It mixes in live instrumentation with subtle electronic effects and so on and so forth. I find this is the sort of thing that works best on a decent pair of headphones, which I've been reviewing for AVF and other people. So I have spent more time on headphones recently, which may or may not have influenced my decision. Nevertheless, it's on the major streaming services. You can purchase it on Bandcamp if you are into buying your music, and so on and so forth. I just think it's a fascinating and I think very intelligent piece of music making. I've thoroughly enjoyed listening to it. I enjoy it sort of happening to you. It's not something that you necessarily actively engage with, but you sort of find yourself thinking about it after you finish listening to it, and then you come back and you play with it, you sort of tinker with it again, and so on and so forth. It's beautifully recorded. Cowley is a decent pianist in his own right. It's him playing the piano. It's extremely good. As Phil says, yes, I mean, as Phil said, look, if you're looking for something that's going to, get the head nodding, fist pumping, so on and so forth, no, sorry, not this week. But if you're looking for something a little bit more considered, I was going to say cerebral, but that's just being unnecessarily rude to people. It's a more gentle, more atmospheric piece. I've thoroughly enjoyed listening to it. I don't expect everyone to love it, but the whole nature of Album of the Week is we should be visiting different things and covering different genres.
Totally. It's just, I think it's one of those albums you have to be in a certain frame of mind for.
I would say headphones, if you've got a decent pair of headphones, that's where it's absolutely shone for me.
The quality was fantastic. It was just, I think at the minute I want some feel good stuff, and it wasn't really.
Oh yes, there's huge elements of that. I don't normally do impromptu playlist things, but Cobuzz has compiled 80s high res masters.
Oh well, I'll have to get that.
And that's quite entertaining. Because it's just songs that you really like from the 80s in really good quality, and you can't argue with that, can you? So
I've been listening to Daft Punk Radio on Spotify.
Yeah, I mean that's good. Oh, incidentally, hopefully, the wherewithal to actually make proper announcements about this. But some weeks ago, when Spotify made the high res announcement, I was pontificating that there were certain things I didn't understand and there were details that were missing. I've had unofficial, off the record briefings about some of those questions. As soon as I'm able to give you more of an answer on them, I will. So they're making some progress there as well. I know more than I did when I was sounding off about it when the announcement came through.
Yeah. I was having a secret meeting at 9 o'clock this morning as well. I was behind the closed doors discussions as well, Ed.
Well, no, I'm not suggesting I'm special. Well, I am special for all so many different reasons. It was more
in your case, I think.
Yes, I know exactly. This was more that I think I came across as quite negative about
you. Negative.
Well, yes, I know. I normally come across quite negative about just life in general. For hi-fi stuff, I'm normally quite enthusiastic. But no, I think I felt my questions were valid. Some of the nuts and bolts of what Spotify is hoping to do are starting to come out, and hopefully we can update you when I know a bit more and I've been given the green light to do so.
But is it going to make a difference, Ed? It's only CD quality.
It works for me.
This is the thing. I mean, some of my all-time favorite digital recordings are still 1644.1. I mean, let's face it. Let's bring this down to the same standards the same rigor that you do televisions with. There's absolutely no limitation in 1644.1 that's beyond, that the human ear can overcome.
Yeah.
So it comes down to the fact that the benefits of high res at the moment are mainly that that people put a bit more effort into actually mastering them correctly. But there's no reason why, if you don't master it correctly, CD, we keep calling it CD quality, 1644.1 isn't perfectly sufficient. And if you can tell, we are sort of stalling because we're going a bit ahead of time, and we don't know where Kaz is, and we need to talk about films, and he's buggered off.
Yeah.
I can kick things off with the first news story because it's not really.
I think we need to.
Kaz, does it?
So I think we need to move on, and hopefully Kaz will catch up with us at some point. So do you want to kick off, Steve?
Yeah,
I mean, like discuss films, not like kick off.
Yeah. Kick off, start thumping something. So next week, the world will get all 4 hours and 10 minutes of Zack Snyder's Justice League. The wait over after the very public demand. But hello, Kaz.
You know what? I'm about as interested in this as I was in the Oprah Winfrey.
I'm well up for it.
I'm well up for it.
Oh, he's back.
I'm well up for it.
Yeah, I'm back. I'm up for it.
All 4 hours of it. Can't get enough. Bring it on. Fantastic.
Yeah, sorry, I had to.
It was a crap film to start with. So how's
the one that was released was a crap film, but half of that was nothing to do. It was a 2-hour film with 40% of it was reshoots.
It's more than that.
4-hour movie.
Yeah.
So almost all the footage has never been seen before. It's a completely different story.
Is it 4:3?
Yeah. Don't get me started on that one. At least the whole thing's 4:3, and it's not mucking about with different aspect ratios. So
that's the most pitiful defense I've ever heard, or at least I don't have to change access ratios.
That's
Yeah,
exasperation
but
changes that annoy the hell out of me. But
But
yeah,
it doesn't matter what display you're watching on now. It could be an 84-inch, 16:9 or a 10-foot scope screen. It's still going to be a postage stamp in the middle.
Hang on,
Nobody's got 4:3.
It isn't. It isn't 4:3. It's 166.
Is it? Is that what he's
Yeah.
going for? Is it?
It's 166. So
Right.
it's not. It's not actually going to be as.
I might just cheekily move it out to 1.78 to 1 with a cheeky bit of masking just to put the screen up.
I mean, it's
Just
not
'cause-
far off. You're only going to get
No,
tiny.
yeah, you're close.
Yeah.
I mean, and given that it was going to be originally was supposed to be theatrically released at 1.85 to 1, he must have at least safe masked those areas, given he would have known that at the time.
Yeah.
It just seems like when they decided to do this, Warner's basically said, like, I don't want any money. I don't want you to pay me a penny. I just want complete carte blanche. I want total freedom. And they seem to have given it to him, and he's just filling his boots with everything he could think of. And fair play. I mean, he seems like a very nice guy. No one seems to have a bad word to say about, unlike Joss Whedon, no one seems to have a bad word to say about Zack Snyder. He went through a terrible tragedy when he was making this film. I think this is a rare occasion where somebody gets some redemption and a chance to finish something they started, and he's got the other film coming out on Netflix, Army of the Dead, a couple of months later in May, which looks like good fun. I'm quite looking forward to that. So good luck to Zack Snyder. I like the guy, and I'm definitely watching. Hopefully I can watch it, because as far as I'm aware, it's going to be available in this country, because obviously we had to have HBO Max, so it'll be available.
It was announced
iTunes,
today. It's on
Sky.
It's Sky. It's
On the
Sky
18th.
exclusive.
Is it?
It's a
Yep.
Sky exclusive. Yeah.
No. Fuck.
I beg your pardon.
No, I'm sorry. That required a swear word.
So what, Now TV?
Oh, so now HBO can stuff it up their arse, and Zack Snyder can go do one.
Sit on the fence, Steve.
Well, no, what's the point of that? That means that no one can see it.
Well, no, it means you can't see it because you haven't got a Sky
Well, I could-
subscription, and you
No.
don't want to watch it on Now TV. It's
No, because that's terrible.
But you could watch it on Now TV, and you could get.
No, I'll give up then. I said I'm going to watch the Joss Whedon version. No,
Blimey.
I'm not doing. I'm going to go now. I'm so upset. I don't want to continue with this podcast.
Okay, Piers. We'll have your resignation in the morning. You're not going to walk off. Go on.
No.
Just because the weatherman had a go at you.
I mean,
I
Was
have
it the
to say-
weatherman?
It was the weatherman that had a go.
I
at him when
didn't.
he walked off.
I've never seen Good Morning Britain.
No, I haven't either. It's just what I picked up.
Is it?
It's what I picked up,
That's
yeah.
funny.
I have to admit, I am with Richard Sim on this. As and when it makes its way into cinemas, the Cocaine Bear movie, directed by Elizabeth Banks. I admire how quickly focus groups have gone. What would it take to get people back into cinemas? Cocaine Bear. I'm all up for that. And I fervently hope that it falls.
Surely
to Tom.
that's a straight to streaming release, isn't it?
it's going to be straight to stream. Anything like that is going to be day and date straight to stream.
There was a tweet reply to it that I hope that it's filmed absolutely 100% seriously, and it's still absolutely ridiculous. But I just love the premise of it. A bear
based
that
on a true story.
based on a true story of a bear that ate 75 pounds of jettisoned cocaine.
Did kill
from a
it, didn't it?
smoking pipe.
Unfortunately. Well, obviously.
Yeah,
Giving
but
that much
what,
cocaine is
what a
definitely going to
way
kill
to
it.
go.
Do you think he started off thinking, I'll eat the bag, and then thought, this is a bit more interesting?
This is But no, if you gave me the choice between 4 hours of Zack Snyder's black and white misery or Cocaine Bear, I'm going to
Yeah.
watch Cocaine Bear.
The poster's got to be the bear at the top of a staircase with a machine gun. Say hello to my little friend style.
I don't know. I don't care. I just, I mean, as film titles go, that's pretty much perfection.
Is that right, Richard Sim? Richard Sim saying it's Lord and Miller.
Yeah,
behind it.
it is. Yeah,
Oh well, then it should have a bit of comedy about it.
it will. Yeah, undoubtedly. Yeah.
I mean, I have to say, I admire. I mean, the bear itself weighed about 200 pounds, apparently, and ate 70 pounds of cocaine. I mean, that's impressive. I admire. I mean, they must have been very Moorish.
You've
as you
obviously
say.
never had a night out in Hong Kong.
Yeah.
So yeah, that was my film news of the week that I'm getting excited about.
Okay.
Because it's all I could ask for in a film and more.
Yeah. Kaz, would you like to say something on the movie sections?
Well, yeah, I got waylaid because my son is going through a phase of requiring stories about and you know, he likes me to make up stories, and I have a penchant for peddling in stories of movies that he'll never get to see. So we're currently working our way through the Mad Max films. So I've got to
So this is why you watch as many things as you do, to stay ahead of your son's requirement for fiction.
Yeah, it's just I gave up with. I used to make up stories, and then I just thought, well, he's not going to watch these films for like 10 years.
But you're going to have that point in 10 years' time, Kaz, where
he's going to go
watch these films and he's going to say, "Hang on, my dad came up with that story."
He's asking me why the bad guy in Fury Road has got a metal plate on his mouth and all kinds of stuff.
Well, he's just wearing a mask. He's respectively.
I know, but it's unnecessary details he gets into. He wants to understand the pod that was jettisoned from the trailer of the truck when they blew up the bridge, and why it had a pod that was explosive at the back of it.
You see, Kaz, you're just overthinking this. My son just enjoys yelling "Witness me" at people.
Well, you know what? I skipped right over Thunderdome. I just could not explain how was they going to even.
Wouldn't he enjoy that? That's the one with kids in it.
It is, but how could you possibly explain it? And
I don't know, but you could have
a giant in the Thunderdome with a whistle, and Tina Turner was there singing.
But you could have a magnificent way of doing, sorting family disputes with 2 men enter, 1 man leaves.
Yeah, I couldn't do it. It was
1 minute cock of the walk, the next a feather duster.
The worrying thing is he's so young that he's still more concerned about vehicular and robotic damage, more concerned about that than human damage. So Mad Max's family is hurt, because I say is hurt. It's fine. Mad Max's car gets trashed. He's in tears. When's he going to get his car back?
Priorities,
Yeah,
right?
To be fair, I was much
It's
the same.
Kundalini, and Kundalini wants his hand back.
Anyway, I watched Raya. We watched Raya with the kids, actually, which is the latest Disney movie. I'm hoping that they're going to do this for Black Widow. So they're going to.
I think they're going to have a lot of choice the way things are looking.
Yeah, I think they're going to. Yeah, but they're going to release it to cinemas where they can, but also give people the option to.
But in this country, I don't think the cinemas are going to be open in May, are they? Looks like they're going to be one of the last things to reopen, so that'll be June probably. So.
Yeah, I mean, they can't see them holding off on it any longer. Anyway, I found Raya was very enjoyable, kind of a slightly older Moana style flick, with some good action sequences, another unusual setting, and I didn't think it was as good as their best in this sort of arena. Like it doesn't hold a patch on Moana, but I thought it's got a good voice cast, and it tells another worthy tale, and it does that thing that most of these Disney movies do, which is really irritating, which is at some point hits an emotional note, which gets you kind of welling up a little bit, not wanting to, but some touching thing, someone dies, someone's reunited, something. They did it in Onwards, they did it in Moana, they did it in this, and I don't know, they did it in Soul. I don't really know how they have that secret sauce, but it has that, and that always gets it a notch above. And I find the 20 quid price tag, I mean, considering I would have probably put down 50 to take both kids, buy them all the popcorn in the world and all the drinks, drive out there, get parking, probably take him to dinner afterwards. That whole thing wrapped up in it, actually, from the comfort of your own home, wasn't so bad. We watched it a couple of times. It's.
No, I'm all for it. I think this should be the way to go. Obviously, I mean, Warner's would have got money out of me next week, but now they won't get a penny out of me.
He's still
not dropping this.
I'm so angry. I'm trying to keep it together right now, but I'm going to smash something when this podcast is finished.
To be fair, I would have said that I would have been semi-tempted if it had been a choice between watching it free in 720p on Now TV,
and watching it
paying 20 quid,
Atmos and Vision,
then I would have probably stumped up the 20 quid just to see it in 4K. So I think it's a shame it's an exclusive, but It is also.
I was
going
to pay next week and buy the disc.
Now you're just going to watch the world burn.
It's only a 4-hour crappy movie. Less
Yeah,
crappy
well,
movie.
talking about another slightly shorter crappy movie, Monster Hunter.
Blissfully short, I have to say.
Okay, it is short. You know what? I found
hour and 43 minutes.
I found it wasn't offensive, Steve. I like it. Wasn't Triple X Return of Xander Cage.
You know what? I enjoyed that film, much to my shame.
I think I
thought that was quite good.
Enjoyed it for a little bit, but I think after a while
I went in wanting to hate that film and ended up really enjoying it. Look, Monster Hunter's fine, but it's just like modern films. They never stop for 10 seconds to give you a bit of peace and quiet. Have two people talk, have a character moment. It's like watching Godzilla vs. the King of the Monsters. It's just non-stop noise.
Well, it didn't help.
As good as it sounded, it would have been nice to have a few. But it just
there's no character moments in this. There's two characters who speak a different language in a film where
I didn't even know what her name was until the end of the film.
I don't know whether they were shooting for something where names mattered. It was, it was just battling.
Funniest thing was the way they were clearly trying to, pander to the Chinese market, and then they got banned in China because of a dodgy joke that they've cut out of the version we watched anyway. Talk about shooting yourself in the foot.
I mean, I saw the PG-13 certificate and I thought this is just going to be absolutely terrible.
Well, that's the only version. It's the version I've got.
But actually, I didn't think. I thought it was. I think that's going to land a 15 in this country. I thought it was a pretty hard PG-13. Like some of it, spiders.
Yeah.
Like I wouldn't. There's boundaries. There's PG-13 and PG-13, but I thought it was at the upper end. And I quite enjoyed some of it. It's utter nonsense, but it's no worse than a Resident Evil sequel.
That's a low bar, Kaz.
Yeah, but
same writer, director,
the same writer, director, and husband and wife team behind them. So it's kind of what you expect. And I don't know. I might have even preferred it to the last Resident Evil, which I felt.
No, I definitely preferred to that because the editing and that was like something like ADHD or whatever it is.
It was
unwatchable.
It was a little bit too far, whereas in this, the editing's pretty bad, but it's not as bad as that. And
it was okay. I just felt like it could have done with an extra 15 minutes of runtime where they had some character. Because at one point, a human-sized cat turns up.
I don't know what that's about.
I thought for a second I'd either fallen asleep or I was tripping. I was like, what the hell is going on?
No, feeling a little bit more about your home life.
That was really stupid. Also, Ron Perlman looked like
just cashing that check, Ron, weren't you?
Yeah, he looked like Will Ferrell out of the Eurovision movie. Yeah. He looked absolutely comedy throughout the whole thing. Massive blonde locks.
Can Tony Jaa not speak English? Is it?
I mean, I think they just got to. I think he can, but they just got around it by pretending he can't, and he has to learn words like.
I mean, it makes sense. There'd be no reason why someone in an alternative dimension would speak English, so that must strangely they were being quite accurate there. But
I would say
made for.
Yeah, if you're teaching people English, teaching them the word chocolate to begin with is probably pretty ambitious. He picked it up pretty damn quickly.
This is a meaningless reference to those of us.
Yeah, you have to see the film to understand.
He doesn't speak any English, so he gives us some chocolate.
He doesn't.
Sorry, he doesn't. She gives him some chocolate and says that's chocolate, and he's like, chocolate. It's like, no, he's not. He's not going to be able to pick that up that quickly.
Well, after that, everything was chocolate, wasn't it? So.
Yeah.
But and also, she gave him a Hershey's bar. That ain't chocolate. That's
no. I would have preferred it if he went this way.
She might as well just wiped her ass.
So is this a documentary or what?
Yeah, it's a documentary
about hunting monsters.
Hunting monsters
in a parallel dimension, which they just fall into by accident.
Well, I mean, it is 2021, you know.
Yeah, true.
Right.
Doesn't necessarily.
Anyway, can I just say 10 out of 10 for picture and sound, 5 out of 10 for movie?
Yeah, I mean,
which means
like most of your 4K content.
I'm heading towards a 6 for the movie because it kind of does what I expected.
You are so generous in your scoring.
I know, but you know, who would go into Monster Hunter expecting more than we got?
Yeah, but coming to America 7 cars, really?
come off it. That was a 1.
Yeah, we'll get onto that next week because that is our movie for the movies podcast on the 15th, and we'll dissect it, no doubt.
Anyway, Monster Hunter is out in 4K in the US and it isn't even out in cinemas here. So, so for those who are interested in checking it out, it's an easy way around.
Well, I hope we've got a review coming now that we've wasted some. We've discussed it on the podcast, Gaz.
Yes, the review will be up this week.
Hooray!
Hey, right. What will we be watching this week, Ed?
MasterChef.
Okay.
Is the honest answer.
Well, the front runner is quite clearly a chef.
I have to,
chef, I have to say.
Steve and I have been discussing this, and this is as far as we're concerned, this is the first instance of an absolute ringer being present on MasterChef, the amateurs that either of us can remember.
Yeah, he claims he works in a restaurant, which I think should preclude you from being in the competition. He works front of house, so he might be, the maitre d' or whatever. But if you look at his food, he's clearly spent some time in the kitchen too.
So yeah, we'll see how it pans out.
I mean, he's really good, but looks professional.
If I was in amateur MasterChef and I was going up competing against someone who worked in a restaurant, I would be very cross.
Yeah.
Other than that, Phil, I have been plumbing the absolute depths of what's on Star. I watched Terminal Velocity on Sunday night.
It's a great film. I like that.
I'm not going to lie. The last time I saw it would have been whilst I was at university and chemically inconvenienced. Shall we leave it at that? It wasn't as good as I remember it, such as I remember it. But yeah.
What did you expect from a Charlie Sheen skydiving movie?
I just remember it being. I
watch anything with Natasha Kinski in it, frankly. So
I remember it being better than it was. But needless to say, it passed a thoroughly respectable. Was it 1 hour and 49 minutes?
Gandolfini the villain in it?
Yeah, with hair.
Yeah, a youngish James Gandolfini.
This is the thing. I love watching these older films, if nothing else, because they generally get everything done in less than 2 hours.
I vastly prefer it to Drop Zone, which is a similar kind of skydiving era one.
This goes back to the thing that you've remarked in the past, where two weirdly similar films get greenlit at the same
What's
time.
That about?
Make it through filming and production with neither side being aware of what the other one's doing.
No. Let's make 2 movies about skydiving.
No, I completely agree. Terminal Velocity is better than Drop Zone.
Yeah, which is crazy because Drop Zone's Wesley Snipes, and he'd just done like Passenger 57, and it's got Gary Busey as the bad guy, and he'd done like Under Siege and Point Break, and now we've got Terminal Velocity with Charlie Sheen in it. How on earth did that end up being a better movie?
It does have the most contrived use of a rocket sled in cinematic history. So, no, as I say, I'm still. It has to be said, Star is still miles out in front in terms of streaming service getting the most use from me at the moment, Phil.
I still haven't had an opportunity to watch it because I'm still trying to get through The Expanse and stuff, and I've only got so much that I can do and watch it one time.
There is a lot on Star.
There is
quite good stuff actually,
and a lot of not good stuff just for people like me.
Yeah.
I'm going to be doing
something for everyone.
I'm going to be doing Titan AE this Sunday.
Oh, I love Titan AE.
Yeah, but that's not a bad movie.
That's a fantastic movie.
Exactly. You got to be talking about the gal marked for death if you want to talk about stuff. I mean, I did Eddie Murphy Metro.
But it was done during the phase of Alec Baldwin stuff where he couldn't contend with the fact that he was increasingly podgy and old, so he switched over exclusively to doing voiceover stuff so he could still be drawn thin.
Eddie Murphy?
No, isn't it? I thought it was. It's Alec Baldwin that does.
In Metro.
No,
Titan AE.
Oh, in Titan AE, yeah,
because he did that unbelievably dreadful CGI film based on the computer game at the same time. Final Fantasy, wasn't it?
Final Fantasy,
yeah. The Spirits Within. That was absolute bilge.
It used to be my demo disc of
choice. It was a demo disc, yeah. One of my demo discs.
Used to be, so cracking.
I've got that disc somewhere. It'll be about 2006, 2007. It's about good 14, 15 years old now.
I don't know. Like all of these things. I mean, and I remember, obviously, yes, I remember the ice crystal sequencing Titan AE, full bitrate DTS. But again, we need to do this, irksome, I know, business of separating the quality of the disc from the quality of the film.
I don't know. I know you say that, Ed, but like watching a really like it's. I know you can't compare these to something like Tron Legacy, but watching Tron Legacy, you can't separate the audio visual side of things. Like it is a hell of an experience. Even
I've separated it quite happily. I listen to the score all the time. I haven't watched the film in donkey's years.
Yeah, but the visuals are tremendous in it. I mean, the set pieces in Tron Legacy are stunning and set to the music. I don't think you can separate it in some films. I agree with you by and large, but in some films, actually, and I'm not justifying Steve's penchant for buying every single disc, no matter how bad it is.
I'm not buying Zack Snyder's Justice League. That's done. They've had their chance with me. They blew it.
I'm not justifying that, but I do also think that a damn good soundtrack and damn good visuals do actually make trashy films pretty enjoyable to watch.
Oh no. I mean, I'm not suggesting it's a bad film for a second. I thoroughly enjoy it, but I do remember that there were some eyebrows raised when George Miller went for Tom Holkenborg to do the Fury Road score. He absolutely nails it. That's one of the most sensational. And Tom Holkenborg, incidentally, is better known to the music world as Junkie XL, who does banging dance tunes. But no, his work there for that is absolutely bob on, perfect.
It is, but there is one motif in that Brothers in Arms during the chase sequence, which I have to say it's like the pinnacle of that entire movie. That everything comes together perfectly in that moment, and the music. And they should have held on to that theme for the movie. They just used it in that one bit, and it never quite hits that high again.
That we don't. We're already off tangent, but there's an interview which I'll dig out if I can remember for the quotes, where there was a lot of argument over that because George Miller was adamant that he wanted to. There's all sorts of really random shots of bits of the war rig in that and essentially he wanted, it's humanizing a piece of inanimate technology, demonstrating that it's something that people have crafted on for years and done all sorts of different bits and so on and so forth. And people he was working with, it's like, well, I just don't understand this. And when you watch it, it just makes so much sense. So yes, but there's an extended. I remember reading an interview where he was going on at length about that. But that whole sequence, as you say, yes, bob on,
tremendous. Yeah.
Steve, what have you been watching?
Not Zack Snyder's Justice League.
No, nor will I ever. No, I said that he was a nice bloke. Well, he's not. I tell you what I've been watching it and thoroughly enjoying, which is on BBC Two on Wednesday nights, The Terror. Actually, you can watch the whole thing on iPlayer, which is what I have actually been doing. Got binging it. But the Terror, which is based on a true expedition to try and find a route through the North Passage. Again, not a euphemism. And they, well, I don't want to spoil too much really, but I mean, it's historical. So obviously the two ships disappeared and eventually they all died on this mission. But this is sort of based on history, but also they mix in a degree of dramatic fiction and a monster that's hunting them, and I'm really enjoying it. Also, a couple of things on Netflix that I thoroughly enjoyed. Murder Among the Mormons is, if you haven't seen it, it's superb, and I highly recommend it. I knew nothing about this story, and which is the best way to go into it, and it's absolutely cracking. And also, Crime Scene, the disappearance at the Cecil Hotel. That's also really good.
A lot of crossover there with Night Stalker, Steve.
Well, he stayed there. Yeah, it was his residence when he was in LA. But this is something about a girl who disappeared in the hotel in 2013, and it's really interesting because it's so not only is it about what happened to her, which is in itself interesting, but also the way the internet blows things out of proportion and looks for conspiracy theories and overanalyzes something and tries to look for things that aren't there. When, as with Sherlock Holmes would tell you, when you've eliminated all other possibilities, the most obvious one is the solution. This is this is that case, but it was really well done, and I recommend that highly too. So those two, I think Netflix, when it comes to movies, if a movie's on Netflix, it's almost invariably crap. But if it's a true crime series, they're almost always excellent.
I completely agree, and it's that at the moment which is keeping me grudgingly paying them money, but I don't necessarily hold out much hope for how their announced business model squares that. I mean, obviously they have set aside money for more of these things, but it's about releasing, summarizing and perhaps oversimplifying it. But the bulk of the plan seems to be about releasing a made for TV movie on a regular basis.
I think that's going to have to change, obviously, with what Disney have been saying yet again this week, the investor call and all that. They are putting everything into Disney Plus.
Yes.
Everything is going into that.
And you can't outspend Disney.
No. So, Netflix, they really are going to have to get their act together. And it's maybe why we're seeing them now cancelling stuff that needs to be cancelled and trimming the belts and
what I'm saying is we need another series of Hyperdrive, because Disney isn't going to make another one of those, and it was weirdly compelling television.
Okay. Yeah, I mean, Netflix can be off the wall like that. There's room for it to be off the wall.
Well, let's face it, in terms of overall budget, Phil, it's not that expensive a thing to make, and it is about niches and exploiting those niches. Because let's face it, you're absolutely right. Netflix is now in a competition with Disney, who, they've had a rough 18 months because of lockdown, but fundamentally they've still got a bit left in the tank, and Amazon, who have their own space program. In terms, what they do cannot be just pure, oh, we're going to compete with them toe to toe on budget, because they're going to lose. So it has to be more cerebral. And these documentaries that we're talking about, they just, the documentary teams they've assembled for some of these things have produced fabulous content, and they need to reinforce that.
But they need to be doing more of it. They need to be, I mean, if you're putting the prices up, which they have done now, I mean, I'm now paying £14 for Netflix,
yes,
which is still good value for what you actually get. But any more than that, then I'd have to start questioning it, because
I'll be honest with you, Phil, it's the streaming service on the bubble for me. Because I'm not watching as many of the documentaries as you guys are, purely because I don't watch as much television as you guys do. But I'm still seeing use out of Now TV for various reasons. I'm watching a lot of Star, and Amazon is an incidental thing that comes because I have Amazon Prime. And Apple TV appears to be something that I get for free because they believe that one day I might watch it.
There's the film Cherry is on
Cherry.
Apple
That looks
on
really
Friday,
good.
Cherry's on
which is the new film from the Russo brothers, who made Endgame and Infinity War. So with Tom Holland, and I will be checking that out on Friday night.
I saw the trailer for that today. I thought, oh yes, that looks really interesting.
Yeah, sorry, Steve, it's a Sky exclusive.
No, it's not.
Cherry.
I know it's not. I know it's on Apple TV.
But
Decent quality.
But no, I mean, we are at the point where, I mean, I looked in the comments when Andy put the Netflix price rise up. There are people going, "I'm done." So they need to be careful what their proposition is, because I haven't watched any, and I do mean this. I'm not being exaggerating this for dramatic effect. I haven't watched any of the Netflix made for Netflix films, any of them, even the ones that are supposed to be good. So
I've had trouble doing that as well.
It's wasted content, whereas the documentaries and some of the stuff like that, I'd come back for that.
Speaking of documentaries, I think it's next week. It's the third season of Drive to Survive, which should be really interesting.
Oh yes,
to run a Formula One season during COVID. So I'm really looking forward to that.
Oh, I'm looking forward to. I'm hoping that they've done a proper thing around that unbelievable Roman Grosjean accident.
Oh yeah, I'm sure that will be heavily covered.
No, and stuff like that keeps me grudgingly paying my £14 a month. So they need to.
But do you need to be paying £14 a month? Do you need 4K?
Yeah, I mean, I bought this ridiculous television.
He participates in an AV podcast. If he wasn't paying for 4K, he'd get shot.
Actually, it's interesting because a lot of the stuff, because I do watch a lot of shite old films, actually a lot of the stuff I watch isn't isn't 4K. But when Netflix, given actually one of Netflix's better USPs is they do shove out a lot of content in 4K and Dolby Vision, it would be churlish. It does feel that part of the subscription doesn't bother me, the extra money for that, because they are actually giving you your money's worth. I just have more actual questions about the content that they're greenlighting, and I think that needs to be revisited in light of just how well Star and Disney and the rest of it are doing.
Yeah, I mean, eventually you'll get to the end of Star, though.
Yeah, exactly. I agree with Phil. Ultimately, Star is it's kind of cute and new because you can revisit all of these old films you haven't seen in ages. There are like 20. There are about 20 on there.
No, there are a lot of great films. Miller's Crossing.
I know there are a lot, but there are about 20 that you probably
Oscar and Lucinda, I'd really like to watch again. There's some cracking stuff in there.
Is there?
But once you get through them,
forgive my ignorance here, but are you saying that there's no plans to bring
add more,
new
won't they?
Yeah.
No, there are plans to bring in new content, but not on a Netflix level. There's going to be like the occasional Star original, yeah.
Yes, but okay, but then the caveat to that is that I've paid 60 quid for the year.
Yeah, I'm not disputing. What I mean is that
as long as there's a tranche of new stuff in time for me to re-sign, I don't care. It's a sunk cost that I'm happy enough with.
I think I've generally found that Amazon are the least value for money out of all.
Yes, but again, the calculation for Amazon is different.
Sure, I agree with that. But what I mean is that Netflix, their problem is their shotgun approach means that you miss out on the gems because they give so much content that they drown out the good stuff. But actually, Amazon don't do that much stuff. And they've got kind of like an Apple model, except with nowhere near the regularity and content. And they're terrible when it comes to presentation. That's
the biggest problem. Their user interface is shockingly bad.
They just release. It's not even just that they don't release this stuff in 4K. They bury it so you can't find it. Or
actually, that's not the case these days because I've been using Prime quite a lot, and it's a lot easier now to pick out the 4K HDR stuff because it's got the smaller banner in the left hand corner, so it's easy to spot as you're flicking through. So I know it annoyed you because there was one thing that you reviewed and it wasn't in 4K. And
it was two. It was Greenland. Yeah, you got it later, so you saw it in 4K. And I Care a Lot.
Yeah, I watched both those in 4K. I thought I Care a Lot was really good, actually.
But it wasn't released in 4K, which was really...
Well, they don't. That's common with Amazon. For the first day or two, you can't find the 4K version. And then a couple of days later, there it is. It is madness. It is madness. I will say, I've said it before, I'll say it again. There is less content on Apple TV Plus, but almost all of it's
uniformly high quality.
Yes.
Yeah, it's real quality content.
Yeah.
They've gone for quality, not quantity. Netflix is the opposite most of the time.
You just have to buy an Apple product every year. That's the only thing.
Son of SJ's just asked, Mr. Selley, what is your new... I don't have a new television. I still have the same 55B7 that I've been using for a few years. And it's fine for my requirements. I was weighing up whether I would do another purchase against it's not company purchase anymore because I'm a sole trader. I was weighing up whether I was going to buy another television or a photo cartridge. And the chances are I'm going to buy a photo cartridge. So either a gigantic box or a tiny box. And I think tiny box is winning at the moment. So that's what I use. But no, Amazon's I don't know, Amazon's whole business model for both video and audio streaming services is just basically to sap independent companies' resources and weight. All they do is exist and do enough to ensure that the Netflixes and the Spotifys of this world are in trouble.
They could absolutely annihilate Sky in one fell swoop if they went for the Premier League packages. They could afford it. They could buy up all the packages, and what would Sky have left? Sky wouldn't have anything left, really, because that's what Sky's business model is: sports, basically, and everything.
Well, it used to be sports and a bit, and also Sky Atlantic. Well, that's going to disappear once HBO Max kicks off in this country, and Disney have obviously already jumped ship. So yeah, if Amazon take their football, they're finished, and good as far as I'm concerned.
Don't hold back, Steve. Say what you think.
Yeah. So we were going to talk about WandaVision, but Kaz hasn't quite finished yet by the looks of things. Have you,
You
Kaz?
watch everything,
No,
Kaz.
no,
How have you not watched WandaVision?
I binged to 6, and then I'm going to binge the rest. But I've got stuff.
Kaz has his mystery job. He's doing the oral retelling of the Mad Max quadrilogy. These are not the works of a moment.
Yeah.
I did watch WandaVision on Friday, as in I started from episode 4. I didn't bother with the first 3 because you don't need to see those. Everything you need to know is in episode 4. So I started from episode 4, and it works as basically as a film.
What, you rewatched them?
Yeah, from 4 through to 9.
Yeah,
I'm hoping that what they're going to do is edit it all into one, so you don't have to keep watching the intro and outros. That'd be nice if they put an edition together like that, so you could just watch it all the way through without watching it as separate episodes. Because I mean, the intros and outros are, and of course
they go on for 10 minutes.
You got pre-credits, post-credits, end credits,
scenes. Are the last 3 episodes only 20 minutes each? Were they long?
No, the last 3 episodes
40,
are more like 40
minutes,
50 minutes.
50
right.
minutes,
Okay.
Yeah.
All right.
But it's well worth it. I mean, it's very, very good. But we're going to talk about it. We'll wait till Kaz has seen it.
Talk about it on Monday, can't you?
Yeah, we could talk about it on Monday. So you got till Monday, Kaz.
Finger out, Kaz. What are you doing?
Christ, if I've seen it all, you're really way behind. You know what I mean?
How in the modern world with the internet, there's no way I was going past Friday without watching that last episode because it was going to get spoilt for me otherwise. Like Kevin Smith alone would have ruined it.
Being lectured by 2 childless men, I salute your restraint. I genuinely do. So yeah, get
your finger out. Right. So Monday we might do mild spoilers. But if we do that,
we'll do mild peril.
But we'll do it at the end.
And some occasional smoking, historical smoking and mild peril.
Yeah, we'll do that at the end of the podcast. So if you don't want spoilers, then you can leave us at that point, which is what we're going to do tonight. But obviously we're not going to do that. So we're going to finish on time. Because that's
this might be a first, is it?
I think this is the first of this year, so we are finishing on time. So we just got podcast competition to do, Kaz.
Sure. To win podcast exclusive copy of Alan Bennett's Talking Heads on Blu-ray, use the following question to pick the correct answer from the competition page. Who wrote Alan Bennett's Talking Heads?
David Byrne.
Snyder.
I love that Talking Heads did an album called Alan Bennett.
It's very good. I am ashamed to say only over a third of people have got it wrong so far.
I have to be honest, I had to do a cream cracker under the sofa as one of my GCSE texts, and I've hated Alan Bennett with every fibre of my being ever since then. So
for a second, you were going to start talking about some game you played when you were at school with your cream cracker under the sofa. Oh my God, where is this going?
What you got up to in your school days does not reflect on what I got up to in mine. I hasten to add, as I have pointed out on numerous occasions before, that both my prep and public school were co-educational.
So even when we're finishing on time, we don't finish on time. So anyway,
we got close
on that bombshell, Ed Selley.
I tied my own shoes once. It is an overrated experience.
Kaz Harlow.
He helped Gilligan get off the island.
And Steve Withers.
If loving the Lord is wrong, I don't want to be right.
If you enjoyed the podcast, then please give us a like and do subscribe to the channel if you don't mind on YouTube. You can also hit the notification bell and we'll tell you every time we upload a new video content, whether that be a podcast or review videos and so on. And of course, you can follow us on Twitter. Ed is...
EJ Selley, at EJ Selley.
Steve is...
at Stephen Withers, with a PH.
I'm at Phil Hinton, and Kaz...
is at home.
At home, yeah. I'm in the Monster Hunter set.
If you want to see soup photographs with some bread, then you can also follow Ed on Instagram, which is...
EJ Selley.
And if you want to see Mustangs, then you can follow me at Phil Hinton. No, at Phil_AVF. I don't think Steve's on Instagram.
I'm a 53-year-old man. I haven't got an Instagram account. Give me a break.
And we know Kaz isn't, because he just hasn't got time for that kind of thing. You can also leave us a 5-star rating on whichever service you listen to the podcast on. If you listen a little bit later, then if they allow it, then please do like the show and give us a good rating on there. But only if you enjoyed the show. I'm Phil Hinton. Thank you very much for joining us. We'll see you on Monday night for the Movies podcast. If not, then we'll see you next Wednesday.